guys, welcome to the Esoteric Deathspiral
Uh...
of music.
Hi, I am also here.
Right. Welcome back to the Esoteric Music Deathspiral, the show where we talk about music and, yeah. So, we've been gone for a couple weeks because I've gone through some crap. Firstly, it snowed like hell where I was because, just a huge winter storm, everything was snow. And that normally that wouldn't be an issue, but the other issue was my laptop basically crapped out on me. It didn't break, but it would randomly shut down. So I just thought, also I need to get a new one anyway, and that's a whole story, a whole other story. But I'm not going to go into that. But suffice to say, we're back, and I'm also back with a new microphone, and this probably sounds a lot better than my shitty headphone mic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we just decided that because of all the crap that we went through, that we would just kind of skip the bi-weekly thing and just go straight into the next Mars Volta album, Amputechture, released in 2006. Merely a year after Francis the Mute, which it's pretty impressive considering the fact that it was Francis the Mute that they just followed up on. You'd think that all their their power levels have drained. We need to wait 5 years before making the next one, but no, next year. Let's do this.
Yeah, there's an interesting little release pattern here with the Mars Volta where you have Deloused, and then 2 years later you have Francis, then 1 year later you have Amputechture, and then there's kind of a similar pattern with 2 years after that was Goliath, 1 year after that was Octahedron, and then Nocturnicat breaks the cycle. That's
then there was
real
3 years.
reason why it's hated.
I think the reason why was just because Cedric just kept not wanting to do the vocals.
Yeah, there were songs that you had to fully redo. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, there was only 1 year between Francis the Mute and Amputechture, which is impressive, but also kind of dubious in a way. If it's a little bit I could see someone kind of questioning why they didn't wait 2 years or longer to release the album.
It's always great when a band releases albums yearly.
Weezer.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that word you said?
I said Weezer.
Oh, oof.
Yeah. But right, so this album Amputechture released a year after Francis the Mute, and it has kind of an interesting story of how Omar basically traveled to the Netherlands and basically wrote all of the music that would be on this album along with a bunch of solo stuff, which is why on one of his solo albums all the titles are in Dutch, which is an interesting point. But yeah, so that's kind of the most of the history up until this point, because of the fact that obviously it's just kind of a year thing. There wasn't really a lot of other stuff that could happen. But so lineup wise, Adrian Terradas Gonzalez, who played on Francis the Mute, is now an official member who plays percussion and various wind instruments. And then also, Paul Inoyos, bassist of At the Drive-In, left Sparta, which is a band that he and Jim Ward and Tony Hajar formed after At the Drive-In's breakup. He left that band and joined Mars Volta as the band's sound manipulator after Jeremy Ward, though there was a couple-year gap between this. He also played second guitar live during the time that he was in the band. So that's basically sort of the history of lineup wise, and I just wanted to say that because this is one of the 2 albums that the band has made where they had this sort of their full 8-person lineup, where he had all members all playing on the album. Though on Amputechture, even though Paul is credited, it's kind of not clear if he actually did perform on the album, or at least according to Wikipedia, that is. I don't know how much weight that really has, but whatever.
There actually is a little bit more to add. Firstly, John Frusciante did most of the lead guitar work on this album, um, in terms of the studio recording. According to Omar, they Omar would teach Frusciante the songs, and then Frusciante would actually play through the studio recordings so that Omar could, quote, sit back and listen to the songs objectively.
All right.
In terms of the lead guitar parts, Omar still did all the rhythm guitar stuff. And knowing Omar, probably, like, tracked, like, 3 extra guitars on every song.
Yeah.
And then, also important to note is that thing you said about Omar writing all the music between Francis the Mute and this album is kind of untrue, because 2 of the songs were kind of reworkings of older material. Right. Those being Viscera Eyes, which was a reworking of a song that they had started on in the At the Drive-In days, and Day of the Baphomets, which was a reworking of a song they had worked on before Deloused, called A Plague Upon Your Hissing Children.
That's funny, because I guess I think I showed you that song, because it's technically not unreleased. There actually is like a release of it, but it's I guess a reworking wouldn't be the right way to say it, because it's more like they took some of the lyrics from the verses and like the way he's like the rhythmic pattern that he's saying them and put them in this new song. Like, that's kind of the only thing that they transfer from one song to the other. It's not like they completely like changed the song. It's more just like they took the song that they like didn't put on Deloused, and then just like, you know, hey, I kind of like the way the vocals sound. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
Which is what they did.
That's true. It's basically a new song, but still, it's important to note that they at least had a blueprint they were working on.
Yeah. Though I have to say, I was just browsing the Wikipedia page for Amputechture, the album they're covering, and the last line under the themes sort of tab is, since the release of the Bellum in Goliath, Victor Zavala and Ruiz Lopez have taken to referring to Amputechture as their, quote, autistic child to the fans' reactions to the album.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that they've said that.
That's weird, because I would assume that, they would call it to Octahedron, but no.
Yeah.
It's this album, apparently.
Well, I had described Francis the Mute as being quite a divisive album, because, some people were like, this is a masterpiece, and some people were like, they've gone too far, this is garish. Amputechture was kind of that part 2.
Yeah. And that's actually an interesting point, because I've said before that Deloused and Francis were my second favorite albums. I sort of tie them as my second. This album, though, is my favorite. I really love this album. I think it's pretty underrated, probably one of the more underrated in their sort of catalog. Mainly because everything after Francis was really divisive, because you had basically every single album after Francis, you had people saying that they loved it or hated it. I personally really love this album. I think it's a lot tighter than Francis. It has sort of a lot of it gets rid of a lot of the sort of the, I guess, the cinematic aspect of Francis, which I was kind of, I mean, I don't think it was bad. Just I was never really big on it. This album kind of removes a lot of that, and I like it a lot more for it, I think.
Well, Amputechture was the first album of theirs that didn't follow a narrative. So, God, throat noises. So this album, in comparison with the first 2, I would actually say it's a little bit more uneven.
In what way?
We'll get into it more later, but I think there are more moments on this album that kind of like rub me the wrong way, whereas like Deloused and Francis feel a lot more cohesive. There isn't really anything I'd take out of those albums. Whereas this one, I'm like, yeah, you could take like 2 minutes off of some of these songs.
All right. I guess when talking about theme, there isn't really like a strict theme, but there is kind of a
There kind of is.
there's a religious thing because like I'm just gonna. I mean, usually we announce the song names while going through the tracks, but I just kind of want to say them right now because they all, most of them in some way relate to religion. So first of all, Vicarious Atonement, according to, I mean, they have, because Wikipedia, basically for every single one of the Wikipedia articles on Mars Volta, they have like a little sort of note section under the song name, sort of explaining what they mean, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Vicarious Atonement is the theory that the atonement of Jesus Christ was legal in God's eyes and that Jesus died in the place of the humans that sinned. The next song, Tetragrammaton, is a reference to the four-letter Hebrew name, often rendered as JHWH or YHWH in English, for the god of Yahweh, for the god of Judaism. And then Mecca Amputechture is basically the album name plus Mecca, one of the holy sites of Islam. And then a Baphomet is an object used for idolizing, also confused with the popular representations of Satan, which is the sense of the Baphomets. And then the last song, El Ciervo Vulnerado, I probably butchered that, is Spanish for the wounded shepherd. In Spanish, ciervo is the word for deer, although it is pronounced in almost the same way as ciervo for Hispanic American Spanish speakers. In this case, the word being used as pastor or, as previously mentioned, shepherd, whatever. Basically, it's just Jesus. It's basically what it is. It's just Jesus.
You missed one there, and that is Asilos Magdalena, which is Spanish for a Magdalene asylum, which were Roman Catholic institutions established and operated from the 18th to the late 20th century, ostensibly to house quote-unquote fallen women, or women who have lost their innocence, usually implying like prostitutes, basically.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Pretty fucked up locations.
Yeah, but yeah, the other two, Vermicide and Viscera Eyes, don't really have that thing. Which I don't. Maybe they just kind of couldn't think of it, like any other weird things. Well, but whatever.
Vermicide is any substance used to kill worms, especially those in the intestines, or the act of killing worms. So I wonder who that is referring to. And yeah, I mean, this album is kind of zoning in on like the religious angle that Francis the Mute had, because that was a topic that was popping up quite a bit on the lyrics there. This one is very much just kind of zeroing in on that, and almost like it's a little bit angrier, like that in comparison with the first two albums. I feel like this one is a little bit more of like a direct social statement compared with Deloused and Francis, which are a lot more about these kind of like confused and angst type emotions in these very like weird narratives.
Right,
which I think is interesting in its own right.
Again, with like 6 of the 8 songs on this album having some kind of sort of religious, idea to it, it would, it makes sense that the lyrics kind of would have that similar vibe. But yeah.
So the only other thing that I will say about this album's production and release, actually we should say two things. One, there was initially going to be original artwork done by Storm Torgerson, who did the first 2 albums and also most of Pink Floyd's discography. That was going to be like a weird picture of a big floating skull in like Wikipedia describes it as decorated in mirror ball fashion, like hovering over a nun. There were 2 versions of this image, one in a forest and one in a big field. But Omar and Cedric were not very happy with it. So they decided to go with the painting Big Mutant by Jeff Jordan.
Yeah, which apparently is actually based off of like a real picture of like a bunch of guys like holding like a giant bomb or something, which
Yeah,
it's kind of
they're
hard to
holding
find
a
that picture.
they're holding a big nuclear missile.
Right.
And
And
then there's, I think, a different painting that they used. Dwarf dancing also appears in some of the like liner notes and other type stuff for various versions of the album. But now, that was just kind of a random trivia fact. Here's a more important thing. This album, so the last Mars Volta albums have all had 2 or more singles released. Because Deloused had Inertiatic ESP released as a single and Televators, and then This Apparatus Must Be Unearthed was also released as like a promo single, and I think there was one other one there. And then Francis the Mute had The Widow and Elvia released as singles, and Elvia even showed up in Guitar Hero. This album only had one single that was released commercially, and that was Viscera Eyes. And if you listen to the single edit, it's interesting, read bad, where it's the first 2 verses and choruses presented normally, and then it suddenly cuts to the like weird like 9/8 guitar riff that comes in before the outro of the song. And then it plays the bridge of the song through a weird filter that Cedric is whispering creepily over, and then and then it just plays the chorus one more time. Yeah, it's on Spotify. The radio edit of Viscera Eyes is fucking weird. And there was
I have not listened to that yet. Wow.
Yeah, and then they did release Vicarious Atonement, the full track, as a promo. Oh, and also that weird radio edit of Viscera Eyes replaced the full version on the band's MySpace page at one point. So
wow,
this seems very deliberate to me. I think Cedric and Omar were always kind of unsure about what people would think of this album. And that makes sense to me because while this album, it's not quite as weird as Francis the Mute in that it doesn't have all the ambient stuff, and it doesn't have like, and that the songs are a little bit more normal in the structure, like, except really for Tetragrammaton and Day of the Baphomets, and which kind of go all over the place, and Vicarious Atonement, which is kind of structureless. The songs are a little bit more structured. However, I in a way I almost feel like this is less accessible than Francis, because
I can kind of see that, especially when the opening and closing tracks are both these weird like atonal jams and stuff.
They're weird, very slow jams. And it's like this album, I feel like it contains some of their most accessible and least accessible material. Like, Vermicide is like, 4-minute, 15-second, like, kind of ballad-y song. Like, if they put that on the radio, it probably would have become a big success. And, like, Asilos Magdalena, you could easily make, like, a 4-minute cut of the song and just, like, give it to the Spanish radio stations. And, like, even Viscera Eyes, like, they could have easily made a more comprehensible cut of the song. Like, I feel like these 3 songs are all pretty easy to get into, but the rest of the album is a lot more out there. And, like, a lot of this album musically is a little bit more kind of loud and unruly. Like, there's a lot more kind of deliberately atonal stuff on this album, or at least that's how it sounds to me. So I feel like they were like, and the fact that it doesn't have a narrative, I feel like they were like, well, maybe people won't tolerate this as much, which, I mean, go on the Rate Your Music page and read the reviews for proof of that. So I feel like they very deliberately kind of hid this album and didn't give it as much promotion. They were like, if you think that you'll enjoy this album. You have to go and seek it out. And I mean, hey,
Yeah.
enough people enjoyed it that it landed on number 9 on the Billboard 200 albums chart. So,
Right.
but I think that's just something to note. It's kind of like how My Bloody Valentine's third album, after not releasing anything for 22 years, how they kind of hid that away on their website and never like brought it onto any streaming sites or anything.
Wow.
So
Though I just want to say another thing. So on the artwork thing on Wikipedia, the last line just like I've read this a couple of times, but I don't know what it means. But it's okay. So yeah, so they didn't use the album that Storm Torgerson made. Then it's like, nonetheless, Torgerson told Classic Rock in 2009 that, quote, our last direct encounter with the Mars Volta in the form of the bizarrely shaped Omar Rodriguez Lopez was very friendly and touching. What does that mean?
well,
What does that
okay.
even mean? Like, what the... What?
Okay, let's dissect this statement.
Yeah.
Okay, number 1. This is the most confusing thing to me.
R?
Who is
R.
like Torgerson is one guy? Is he referring to like him and his chauffeur?
Maybe he's like talking about like the team that he's a part of, because he
He was.
did have. Well, when I say team, he had like his like, I don't remember the name, but he had like a group. He had like the sort of the art group that made all the Pink Floyd album covers.
Okay,
Forgot the name.
it does say that he was also a music video director, so yeah, I guess he was part of a team, so I guess that's what he meant. But
Oh, yeah, here we go.
And then bizarrely shaped. Is that just like is he just like calling him like too skinny? I mean, that's kind of a weird thing to say. Like,
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense. I would just imagine like in my head, like they brought like a weird like misshapen like golden statue of Omar, and it's just like he's got like a microphone. It's just like a thanks for the album cover.
or it just comes with a note that says, "Hey, you're pretty cool."
But I guess maybe the bizarrely shaped like maybe that actually just maybe that was just like him kind of jabbing at Omar.
Yeah, I think that's probably what he meant. I mean, Omar is like, I think he's a vegetarian or a vegan, one of the two. Maybe that's what it was a jab at. And then, I mean, I guess by friendly and touching, he just meant like, I think a friendly is pretty self-explanatory. I think touching is just like, I guess it's like they saw each other and it was just like, I think he was just like, oh, it's nice to know that they still respect me, even though they rejected my painting.
I think for me, like, the thing is that I actually read it as in the form of a bizarrely shaped Omar Rodriguez Lopez, so I'm just like, why would that be friendly and touching? Like,
Oh, they said the.
yeah, I know. I originally read it as a, but then
okay.
I realized it was the, and then like, yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's break it down. Actually, first, what are our ratings out of 10?
I think pretty obvious. I think I would give it a 10 out of 10. Again, I think it's probably the most underrated album and their best because it avoids a lot of what I thought of as fluff and kind of just goes straight for the jugular with its really great music.
I give it an 8. Sometimes I will give it a 9, but I think usually I'm more around the 8 region. And then, Max, what would you give this album?
I'd give it a 6 or a 7, mostly a 6.
All right.
So this is a good setup we got here. We're all directly 2 points away from each other.
Yeah, no, we just need like 5 other people and just go into the negative numbers.
Someone gives this album a -2. It's like one of those really shitty rate your music reviewers.
It's just like you know, write the most like clickbaity review of Metal Machine music. Done.
Damn.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we could. Oh, I completely forgot. This is also the last album to feature John Theodore on drums.
Yes, that is important to note because he's a god.
Yeah. He basically like left like right after this album was recorded. Like,
yeah, it's pretty hard like to find live footage of these songs that actually have him performing on them. However, if you look a little bit more at the liner notes and personnel credits here, this kind of makes sense, seeing as Vicarious Atonement opening track has no drums. El Ciervo Vulnerado barely has any drums. And in the verses of Mecha Amputechture, the drums are done by Marcel Rodriguez Lopez, not John Theodore.
Yeah.
So
though again, Omar plays bass on the Mecha Amputechture verses, so who knows?
Well, even then though, like Juan Alderete would still be featured on 8 out of 9 tracks, whereas John Theodore only was on like 2/3 of the album. I mean, granted, he still would have been on parts of Mecha Amputechture, but you get the point. I feel like it is possible that he could have felt kind of left out.
Right, because I remember there's a video of sort of an interview with Cedric about explaining kind of why he left. And I think it was that they kind of pushed him too far and he felt just kind of not in the band. Also, it's because of the fact that at the time they ran the band very it is me and Omar doing everything. You have to follow everything we say. You have no sort of direct input in the music. If you don't agree, just leave. And that's kind of the reason why he didn't want to stay, so he left or something like that.
Well, they were allowed to take liberties. However, literally, if you look at the liner notes for any album after Francis the Mute, even on Goliath, Octahedron, and Nocturnicat, it says, quote, "The partnership between Omar Rodriguez Lopez and Cedric Bixler Zavala is the Mars Volta. These compositions are then performed by
the Mars Volta group."
Classy.
Which is like, okay then.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they just kind of were... I mean, who knows? Maybe they just wanted to be more, pretty clear with, this is just the Cedric and Omar train.
That's definitely possible, especially since, John Theodore was starting to get kind of annoyed with that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in recent years, Juan Alderete, who was the bassist on every album after D-Louse and the Comatorium, he and Omar had a bit of a falling out in recent years. So I guess who knows? He could have already been kind of annoyed back then, and they could have just really wanted to get the message across and failed.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get into the tracks, starting with track 1, Vicarious Atonement, which if you wanna have a good mind fuck, I would recommend looking up any tab for this song, because this song, it very much is a jam, and it is seemingly not played in any time signature.
Yeah.
Or any tempo. So if you look up any tab, it goes between 16:32 and 8:7 or whatever, 7:8 or whatever. Just a bunch of really bizarre time signatures and constant tempo changes. The first time I listened to this album, I was like, this is a pretty cool mood setter. And then Tetragrammaton started, and I was like, wait, that was the whole song? What the fuck was that? But now when I listen to the album, I actually really get into this song, especially because, this song basically just has one really long verse and then an outro. And during the outro, the bass part and the keyboard part are, really, really great. They're, very jazzy and very kind of atmospheric, and the guitars are also playing a lot of kind of weird chords. This song, in spite of being kind of structureless, I think it's musically very interesting. And I also really like Cedric's vocals on the track too.
Yeah, it's quite the I think it's quite the interesting sort of song. It's a really interesting way to sort of open and close an album, because the last track is very similar, because they're both relatively in the same key, and they both kind of have, I guess, kind of the same sound, but it's, like I said, it's pretty it's pretty different to sort of open and close an album with sort of two almost identical sort of ambient tracks. Especially when you consider that this band isn't really like they're not really known for having sort of these weird kind of post-rocky things. Like when they did have sort of the jammy, not jammy, but like the ambient parts on Francis the Mute, they were sort of more sort of avant-garde, just straight like ambient sounds. But this one is just like it's like ambient sounds, but if you like added like
I would call this more of just like a jam, like more of just kind of, it's almost more of like a jazz type song than
right.
like whereas those are a lot more like suites, just like individual parts of songs.
Right. But yeah, I think it's a really great way to open the album with just this kind of slow building thing. And also the one thing this album has, which is really weird to me, it's kind of the one thing like sort of there's basically like no transition between the songs. Like songs will just like stop and start on a dime. Like there's
actually a very interesting thing with that, where if you look at like the waveforms and stuff like that for these first two tracks, Vicarious Atonement, actually no, not these two, Tetragrammaton and Vermicide, you can hear the beginning of Vermicide at Tetragrammaton, and you can hear the end of Tetragrammaton, or maybe the start at the end of Vermicide.
Huh.
So those two tracks just kind of loop into themselves weirdly. And so some of these songs seem to be out of order, but then at the same time, there's actually an interesting thing. It may be unintentional, but on the Mars Volta subreddit, I found this thing recently that really fascinated me, which is that the key of the songs on this album are like a loop. Vicarious Atonement is in the key of C, Tetragrammaton is in B, Vermicide is E, Amputechture is B, Asilos Magdalena is D, Viscera Eyes is in G, then Day of the Baphomets is D, B, E, B, and then El Ciervo Vulnerado is C. So
wow.
There's like a very close loop here with Viscera Eyes basically being like the centerpiece.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess with Vicarious Atonement, it's just kind of that. But so what are your thoughts of the song, Max?
I think it's a good, like, atmospheric start to the album. I don't think it's as strong as other openers in the previous two albums, but overall, it is, again, it's pretty good. A lot of my opinions on this album is, yeah, it's pretty good. Nothing to write home about, really. But if I were given the option, I probably would listen to it. But and that's pretty much my opinion on like most of the songs, with some nuances here and there, except one, which we will get to soon.
All right.
So
Okay.
one thing I was gonna say about this song is that I agree with you, Max, that this song on its own is not as good of an opener as either of the last two albums, but I don't know, I feel like it's very much just kind of like expanding on just like the atmospheric parts of the openers on the last two albums. So I don't really think it's a very fair comparison anymore.
Yeah, I guess the song on its own, I definitely see the atmosphere they're going for. I just wish it was a tiny bit stronger. Like I feel like the all the atmospheric components on here could be a lot stronger.
I actually kind of agree. I think you could maybe tighten it up a bit. Mostly just
Yeah.
have the bass and piano enter in a little bit earlier.
Alright.
But I still really like it. But then we get into Tetragrammaton, basically universally agreed upon as like the best song on this album and one of the best Mars Volta songs.
Though I would say that it is one of the best. I wouldn't say it is the best on the album, but we'll get to the one which I think is the best later. But
all right.
yeah, this song is still pretty strong. one thing to know is that it's 16 minutes long. It's the second longest Mars Volta
It's
song
almost
ever.
17.
Yeah, and it's the song it's really interesting because it is basically sort of, I guess, the most like traditionally progressive they've ever got, maybe, because like it definitely, to me, it definitely does sound like the kind of thing that Genesis would play or something. But it's I really like this song because it opens like really strong with this kind of like sort of rising kind of rhythmic guitar riff where it kind of plays the same sort of rhythm over and over again, but it's like it's constantly sort of rising and falling. And then like after that repeats once, it's the same thing, but then like there's Omar's extra sort of really sort of like Middle Eastern sounding sort of guitar. I don't even know if it'd be a solo, but it's like
A lot of like
I guess like
these kind of Middle Eastern scales are scale arpeggios kind of
yeah,
going on there.
be more like an arpeggio. So yeah, arpeggio, and it does that, and then like it repeats that twice, and the like the third time it's that plus it's another one playing in the other channel. So you have like these two, like again Middle Eastern arpeggios playing, and then like it goes to like this really quiet bit where it's just kind of Omar playing his guitar with like the where it kind of just really fucks around with like the channels where it's going back and forth and like going around in circles. And then okay, I feel like if I were to explain every single part of this song, it would take forever. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
16 minutes long.
Yeah, no, this song. Okay, so on Francis the Mute, the final track, Cassandra Gemini, was 32 minutes long, so literally long enough to be its own EP. But
Yeah.
I think Omar once described it as like its own album as a full track. Tetragrammaton, I would say, is kind of the same type of song where it's like a full EP or album in one song. Because like I don't even know, like if you go on Genius and look at the lyrics, they just like label everything that isn't the chorus or the refrain as a verse. But if you tried, I don't know how you'd try and like notate the different sections of this song really.
Yeah. Because this song changes like 8 times. And like that's only the parts where like it doesn't repeat itself. Like this song has like 8 different unique parts to it, basically.
Yeah, this song is a lot like I think probably, even though I compare it to Cassandra Gemini, I think probably the closest comparison would be something like Cygnus Vismon Cygnus off the last album, where it's just really just kind of going off in as many different directions as they can fit into 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's but it has all these cool parts. Again, like I think the part that it's the repeat the most, where it's the kind of sort of rhythmic thing, where it's like I'm not gonna you know what I'm talking about, where it's the low end sort of chugging riff.
Do 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 do.
Yeah, that part.
Do do. Yeah, that's probably the most repeated part of the song, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
The first time I heard the song, and I heard Cedric's overdubbed falsetto, I was like, why? But I am more than okay with it now. That is one thing to note about this album, is that Cedric, in spite of this album only coming out a year later, Cedric's voice changed quite a bit in between Francis the Mute and this album. It's a lot clearer, like when he's doing like chest singing and when he's doing like falsetto, like nasal singing. The first time I listened to this album, it really bothered me, and I was like, what happened to Cedric? But then but on the second listen, I was like, yeah, this is a step down, but this is still good. And now I'm like, this is only like a half step down, and and even then he's still like a really impressive vocalist.
Yeah, I think this is the first album where he fully sort of abandoned his At the Drive-In style singing, like with sort of that very sort of clean thing. Where I don't think this album is as like there's not a lot of I don't think this album has a lot of nasal singing when compared to like the next album, but we'll get
Oh, definitely.
yeah. But Yeah, no, it's very clear that he's worked a lot on his vocals, and it really pays off because especially he can like hit those high notes just so well.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible that he can, though.
And
I
one
think
thing,
probably
oh, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, even if I don't think his range is as wide, I still think it's very impressive. And I think this song in particular, really there's a lot of vocal range in terms of like dynamics. Like the verse vocals are like very kind of quiet and like emotional and melancholic, and then you get to the chorus and it's like these like big multi-track like falsetto vocals. I'm not even sure what emotion they are, but
Yeah,
it's really cool. And like it like really kind of fits in spite of that. Like the chorus and verse, like it would almost be like too much contrast, but it works really well. And I'm
Yeah.
not entirely sure kind of how. And then just like, and then you get into like a lot of some of these other sections here. What is labeled on Genius is verse 5, but as most people, which you could probably call like interlude 3, but most people know as the section where they say the line, "The kiosk in my temporal lobe is shaped like Rosalind Carter."
Oh, yes.
And that section
part.
has like really weird delivery, and they put the vocal
Oh,
effect
yeah.
where it's like
But, like,
doubling
the-
his voice. It's kind of like the effect they had at the start of Cassandra Gemini during the spoken word segment. But like if they detuned the voice even more and like put a weird like phaser on it or something,
Yes.
and then like later on, I'm trying to find the section, what's labeled as the bridge.
Is that the slow part? The slow kind of jazzy part?
That's the "wait till I get my hands on you" part.
Oh, okay, that part.
And then that's like a totally different vocal delivery. There's like so many different
The weird,
vocal
it's the weird kind of
deliveries
one where he's
here.
like straining his voice till I get my hands on you.
Yeah, and he sounds like
Yeah.
really kind of like, yeah, kind of like creepy and
Yeah.
all kinds
I
of
have
stuff.
to say, that part where like he's singing with like the weird vocal part during the pig scabbled hand, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a weird robot like
Yeah.
thing, but I kind of don't really like that. Like I
Oh,
feel
I
like they
love
did it a lot.
that. The first
I-
time I listened to the song, I was like, "What the fuck is happening?" But now I'm like,
Yeah.
"What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah, it's not that I don't like it. It's just like they do it a lot better on like because it's the live version of the song, which is played at like the Nissan live thing, and the vocal effect that they have on it, it's like this weird kind of like weird like wave like whoa.
Kind of
thing.
like a flanger, like flanger, flanger.
I don't know how to describe
however
it. It's
you
like
say it.
it's a lot more weirder, and I like the way it kind of comes off. But yeah, I guess also the one thing about that part is the guitar melody is really weird. Like it's just like it's like
all
it's an
over the
arpeg-
place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an arpeggio, but it's like the notes are like totally like not in the same melody, so it comes off as like really jerky.
It's
but
like
it's
if-
great.
It's like if you took two arpeggios that are in different keys and then you chopped them in half and fused them together. That's how I
Right.
would describe the riff. There's a part in Take the Veil Serpentax that has a very similar sounding riff, just like
Right.
a lot more subdued, and I kind of think they did it better here. And just like I don't even know what the emotion is during that part of the song. Like it's like
Probably like insanity.
yeah, it's like insane. I guess I just described it as like so insane that like I'd almost describe it as tortured, but it's so insane that it becomes almost comedic. Like
Right.
the first time you hear it, you're like, what is he talking about? What is this effect? What is the riff? What is going on? And then you hear it again and you're like and you kind of like it's so weird that at that point you feel it.
Right. But then what's really cool is that after that part they go into like
The refrain.
I don't get that where it's like the let me see it's the gasp me the hind of your five-legged snare part, and Omar's like he's playing the same like rhythm, but it's like a lot more melodious. Like it's the notes are played in the same way in the same order, but it's not the same notes, but it's a lot more melodious and cool sounding.
Yeah,
So
it's a
like
cool part because it's kind of like if you fused that weird little interlude with the chorus. Because the vocal melody there is pretty similar to the chorus one.
yeah, so it is kind of it gives that way. I think the one thing about the song that I kind of don't like is the part where it goes like really quiet and it's just Omar and Cedric's vocals. Even on that part, like where it just goes like really quiet and it's just like Omar playing three notes while
You mean the part where the trumpet's doing the like do 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 like
no,
that
not that
part?
part. The
Okay,
the
good,
one
because
right
I love that part. And
no that part's great, but it's the part right before the chorus comes in and then the weird part afterwards. Where the entire key of the song changes from like B to like C.
oh, I'm okay with that part. Because
I don't know.
I like that after that big chorus there, there's kind of like a soft part and then another loud part and then we're into another soft part, but it's the kiosk in my temporal lobe part, and that part is so weird that you're still like really off center, and then the refrain, the in the end they just gagged me to make him come out. That's like that in
Oh, I'm not
that
talking
part
about that
like
part.
the well no I'm
Oh,
just kind of going off on a different tangent, just like the song. And and that part, like the guitars kind of like are silent for a second, so it's like it's really like recentering you after this
yeah.
bizarre part, and then it's like everything is coming together for the next two little verses here, and then one more chorus and then the little bridge part. I don't know. I think this song is like I don't really have any issues with the structure until after the big fade out. It goes back into the chorus. Again, this song is like is kind of like Secretries EXP, except better for me because I'm like, you guys didn't need to go back into the chorus. The fade out was good enough.
I don't know. It's weirdly structured, but like that's kind of what I think is cool about it. It goes through all these different moods, and like you can very easily like mistake different parts of the song as just like completely different songs.
As well, okay, we haven't done that, but we have mistook different parts of the song for each other.
Yeah. But
I mean, I love the weird structure of the song. The only thing is just I don't think they need to go back into the verse and chorus at the end there and then redo the really cool kind of intro part. It's like I feel
yeah,
like
that was weird.
I feel like that's kind of unnecessary.
And but the part I was talking about, though, this little part is the part where he goes outside by the drift. You read my will.
Yeah.
Is that part? That's the part I was talking about, where it's just kind of like the really echoey, slow guitar.
Oh yeah. Actually, that part is a little bit weird. You could maybe like cut that and just have kind of the weird build up after that part, and that goes into the really weird silken drain, the fall, pig scalp, temporal lobe, whatever the fuck part. That is the official name of that section. That's what it says. My uncle works for the Mars Volta. That's what he told me.
Yeah, his name was I don't whatever. Couldn't think of anything funny, but yeah, no, that part kind of just comes out and it kind of just derails the song for me. So I usually just skip it. But yeah.
Usually for me, the song is just so dense that it's like if there's any part in the middle that it's kind of questionable, it's like the next section is cool enough that it makes up for it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's why the ending bothers me still. Whereas, like, the first time I listened to the song, what Genius has labeled verse 4 and verse 5, the two parts we've been talking about a lot, kind of bothered me more. But then, like, but on the re-listens, everything flows together a little more naturally.
Yeah.
One thing we should probably bring up. So on this album, I don't think I'm going to be singling out as many specific lyrics as I did on the last two albums. But I do think this song has a pretty interesting premise that I think we should bring up. So in an interview, Cedric kind of described the premise of the song. I was watching CNN and we were in Poland, so that kind of ties back into what you were talking about earlier. And the story was about a woman in Romania who was, for lack of better terms, possessed. It was a small congregation that she was a part of, and they didn't know what to do with her, and they didn't try to exorcise anything from her. They just stuck a sock in her mouth and hung her out on a cross, and then on the next day they found her dead. And when the news team was there to investigate it, the next day they showed the guy who did it, the main priest. It was like out of a movie. He looked like Rasputin, and all the women in the congregation looked like they had shit themselves. Now, this quote on Genius, this is a slightly questionable, because if you've watched the YouTube channel Lee Likes Music, and you've seen his series on the Mars Volta, the quote he presents is a bit different, where, firstly, he cuts out the part at the end about the guy looking like Rasputin because it doesn't really matter. Secondly, he says it was a towel, not a sock. And then thirdly, he kind of expanded on that, where the version of the quote that he got, Cedric kind of went on to say that he was saying how it to him, it kind of read as a weird look at the tradition where we tend to like incarcerate people for being crazy, whereas in other parts of the world maybe that woman wouldn't have been seen as insane but rather seen as like a shaman or something. And he had said that to him a lot of this album is like from the perspective of that kind of person who's like exiled by the church for seemingly being possessed or crazy. And to him, that's a perspective that comes up throughout the album. Just, I don't know how to interpret it. I'm not smart, but that's I think it's interesting. And I mean, there's a lot of one thing about, again, all of Cedric's lyrics are weird and insane. And and like every once in a while you get like, there are times where the perspective almost seems to shift, or there are lyrics that just outright make no sense. Like in the big weird part, everything before the kiosk in my temporal lobe is shaped like Rosalind Carter is just like outright gibberish, which is supposed to represent like speaking in tongues, and that's also what the weird effect represents. But then that part there, if you've ever, there have been a couple times where Digibro, of all people, has explained this lyric, the kiosk in my temporal lobe, and then the following lines, she says, "My map is home again but torn face down. I have only but a million blemishes to tell you all about," which these three lyrics here are all of the sudden about how Rosalind Carter, who is the first lady of the 39th president of the U.S., Jimmy Carter, had like a whole plan to like Americanize like people from Mexico and South America by like kind of adopting Christianity, like specifically like American and British Christianity, and like sort of getting them sort of like kind of having them adopt like American traditions. And the temporal lobe is the part of your brain where like your memories and your personality are formed. So that line has like a weirdly intricate and personal meaning, but then the rest of the verse outright means nothing. And like the map and the home again and all of that is like referring to Mexico. So it's like all of a sudden the perspective shifts and it's not about the woman in Poland anymore. One thing I will say about this album, I could understand someone who would say like that this album is a little bit more muddled in terms of lyrics. It's weird. I think the overall message is a bit clearer, but I do think every song has a moment where I look at the lyrics and I'm like, I don't know how to interpret this at all.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like, he does that a lot, especially I think on like later albums. Or at least to me, like the next album has a lot more weirder lyrics that kind of don't make any sense. But like, it's kind of what I like about it too. It's just the fact that like, how do you come up with this shit, man?
That's
like,
true.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what is what makes Neutral Milk Hotel so great. It's just the lyrics are just like weird ramblings, but it's always really entertaining.
I mean, to be fair, in Francis the Mute as well, there are also in both this album and Francis the Mute, there are sections where they just used the first take of Cedric singing gibberish because they thought that was quote more honest. That was his honest reaction to the music or something like that. Um, I think it shows a little bit more on this album, where it's like, you know, what the fuck does sulking drain the fall of my pail while swarming by your steps, licking the ankles of your blasphemer guilts mean?
Yeah, it's just weird words that sound in like they kind of sound good together. So let's do it. That's probably the actual thought process behind that.
Yeah.
Just,
But then at the same
but-
time, it's like sometimes the notes he's singing are so beautiful that it's like, I don't know who Roosebell is, but when he sings "Tell me it's over, Roosebell awaits," that the specific notes, the "Tell me it's over," it's like
Yeah.
it's like a really like ooh, it's like soothing and chilling at the same time.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it's cool. It's fun to talk about the lyrics. It's fun to be baffled, but at the same time, it's like they should be taken very seriously and not seriously at all.
Yeah. So is that all your thoughts on the song, or not?
I guess so. Just like everything is cool.
Right.
Actually,
What are your thoughts,
one thing I will say, I want to elaborate just a little bit more. Keyboards in this song, that chord progression during the intro is the coolest sounding thing. I love it. It's so like again, it feels a little like Middle Eastern influenced, and I love it in that it sounds epic but without sounding like typical. Like, like a lot of epic music kind of tends to fall into like the same keys and chords. Maybe that's the case here, but but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they picked very unique chords for the keyboard to play there. And then I also like in the intro part there how the drums are like really intricate and really kind of going all over the place, but then the keyboards are kind of a contrast to it. And then there's kind of a reverse there during the kiosk section, as I will now refer to it. I finally came up with a good, concise name. It only took me 15 minutes. During the kiosk section, the guitar is super weird, as we were talking about, but the drums are like a lot more just kind of like backbeat. And it's really nice because it helps kind of ground the song a little bit, especially because like this song does have like a lot of kind of weird time signatures, and I don't know if that's a specific part of it, but one thing I like is that about a lot of the Mars Volta's music is that the grooves on the drums and the bass are always so strong that it's like this could be in like fucking I don't know 21/8, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like just a really cool groove.
No, actually, that does remind me how the part where it's like the rhythmic riffing that is in 3/4, but it doesn't feel like 3/4
during the chorus.
I guess that's what you would call it.
It's listed in the chorus, and it's the most repeated part of the song, and it's a big epic part. I think it qualifies as a chorus.
Sure, let's just call it the chorus. It feels like it's in 3/4, or no, it's in 3/4, but it doesn't feel like it's in 3/4 because everything kind of starts in odd places. So it kind of feels more. I don't know how you describe it. It doesn't feel like 3/4 to me, though it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this song just musically, structurally, everything extremely intricate and all over the place, but mostly cohesive in spite of that.
All right. So
I mean,
oh, here you go.
I mean, it's a good song. It's a really good song for all the reasons you guys have described. But I want to take this opportunity to discuss my personal problem with the entire album, that it lacks like a cinematic feel. Like the whole album is just kind of, hey, this is some cool music. This is some nice music that I can listen to, but it doesn't feel cinematic. It doesn't feel like this big epic thing. It feels like a progressive rock album. And hey, I am down for a progressive rock album, especially if it's by the Mars Volta. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like I'm on a journey. It feels like I'm listening to a bunch of cool things being slapped together, which is fine.
That's
But
okay. Sorry.
That's kind of understandable when you consider like sort of the last album and like its giant feel, or even D-Louse with its story. But I think
what I was gonna say, for me with the flow of this album, it feels less like a cohesive journey and more like pieces of a journey chopped up. Like
a spiritual journey.
kind of. It's like you're remembering a journey that you went on, and like, maybe you have parts out of order, maybe you don't. It's more like if you like visited like a town, let's say like a desert town in Mexico, and you like, and you kind of were remembering the sequence of events, and you kind of just like grouped everything around like kind of a similar theme, but like that's kind of how it comes across to me. It's like remembering a journey you went on.
Yeah,
I could very much that is a kind of a forced connection, but that's kind of what it reads like to me. And I do think as a whole this album, I do still like the flow of it, because I feel like we have like a big build up at the end, and then we are for most of the middle of the album we're just kind of gravitating between like sort of louder, more intricate songs and quieter, more simple songs. The only real exception of that is Viscera Eyes and A Day of the Baphomets, which is kind of like a loud song and another loud song.
yeah.
And then we have a big like kind of resolution with El Ciervo Vulnerado that just kind of suddenly gets cut off. But we can talk more about that when we talk about the other songs.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
if I
already
wanna-
like what? We're already an hour into this, and we're only on to the third song. Oh fuck!
One more thing I want to say about this. If I want to listen to some, I am remembering a journey. I would listen to like minimalist classical or shoegaze. That's just me.
That's
All right.
true.
That makes sense.
That's true. If I was in that kind of mood, I would probably rather listen to like have Death Consciousness by Have a Nice Life. And I mean, I guess for me, yeah, I don't know. This album feels very like almost atemporal, and I kind of like that. It's kind of unique to me.
All right. So time to move on to the next song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next song is Vermicide. I think we could say for certain that this is this album's Widow.
Yeah,
Like,
Definitely.
This is the pop song of the album, and it's, to me, this song kind of comes off like what, like I imagine it's just like Cedric and Omar sitting in a room like, okay, so we need to have the pop song in this album, but let's just go really weird with it, like a really weird pop song. And I say that because of the fact that not only does the song, for one thing, it has like some weird vocal effects, like they can start off with like this, this nice sort of, guitar and keyboard melody with the slow drums, and then you have Cedric's vocals come in with like the weirdest stutter effect I've ever heard. Like it's just like, then what there is error.
Pretty much.
Like, yeah, it's like really fast and stuttery, and it's just weird. Like it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't expect out of just like this really sort of calm song. And stuff.
Okay, so there's this review on Rate Your Music. It's a 4-star review, but it's very like it's kind of it's a very tongue-in-cheek, sort of mocking, but ultimately positive review.
Yeah.
It's like from the Secret Notebook of Omar Rodriguez Lopez. And so, okay, for track 3, it says track 3, Vermicide. Okay, might as well get the marketable single out of the way. We'll have to add some vocal effects, though. Note, lyrics too intelligible. Tell Cedric to fetch his thesaurus.
Like, fetch the what?
The thesaurus.
Oh, fetch this. Okay. Quickly fetch the medicine. All right. But yeah,
I will definitely. I will definitely be referencing this review at other points. I kind of missed a good opportunity to do so with Vicarious Atonement. But
Okay,
now I have the Rate Your Music page up, so you know.
All right. But I think also the song is a really great chorus because the vocals and the music kind of line up really well, and it gives off this kind of like sort of big operatic feeling. Okay, the lyrics bear them 7-3 to appall, marks
Yeah.
the venom, blush and terminal. It has that kind of a sort of rhythmic sort of bear them 7, like that.
Oh yeah, and also the notes with the lush and terminal. You didn't.
I could have done that myself, you know.
Sorry, I wanted to have sort of the whatever, but yeah.
Well, the problem with that is that we're inevitable is that I start singing and then like we're like a second out of sync to me, so then I stop and I'm like, well, termina.
Sorry. Okay.
It's fine. I don't mean to like actually berate you, and now I'm just digging myself deeper
No,
into the dirt.
I get
This
it.
is like one of those like weird moments where like you're sitting at a dinner table and like two of your relatives are like kind of passive aggressively mad at each other. That's what this is like for the viewers right now, except we're not
Right.
like your relatives. It's like you just stumbled into a random house. Don't cut any of that or all of that or none of that, Max, or me,
right.
or whoever. Anyway,
right.
but
But
so
I
yeah, this I was being a little disingenuous earlier with that review. I don't think this is a cynical song at all. I do like it a lot, especially that chorus. That chorus is infectious and emotional, and the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa! Like, I was instantly into this song.
Right.
Because it's great. I will say though, like I don't think it's a very weird song. Like I think it's very. I do kind of agree with the review. Like I was more just saying that as kind of a rebuttal to like I don't think it's a very weird song except for the bridge when you get into the embalming all the fluids and I prefer to burn them and like the nice doubling vocal effect there.
That was the one part I was going to say was weird with the bridge because it completely changes like tone and entirely to like this weird kind of like I don't know like alien like thing with Cedric's vocals just weirdly laying on top of each other, and then it comes in with like a really powerful verse and then the sort of another chorus, but since like Cedric's kind of straining the vocals, it's like really kind of like offbeat, but that's what's cool though because it's like he's like singing these longer notes, but like the music's still playing like it did before, so it kind of gives off this kind of like I'm doing my own thing vibe.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of weird there. I do like that ending. It's a nice way to change up the chorus, especially because the vocals in the first two choruses have these like has a compression on it that makes it sound like extra uniform. So suddenly having the vocals like no effects on them, saying separate from the rest of them, it's a really nice effect. And I also there's a lot of great things about this song. I like the overall tone of it. Like I like how there's this it's kind of melancholy during the verses and then the chorus is like a big explosion of angst, which I really like. And then the interlude is like a little bit kind of calmer, and like and not quite as emotional. And then the bridge is like really creepy of a build up, and then we're into the bigger version of that kind of melancholy do 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 riff that's going on for most of the song, and then it just goes into a shredding guitar solo. Like I will say about this song, even though it's like a very kind of traditional structure, I do think it's nice in that it goes in a lot of different places tonally, which is like pretty nice. I think there's only one minor gripe that I have with this song, and that is that in the intro of the song you can hear the bass really clearly and it sounds really good, but then for most of the song you can't really hear the bass, even though it has a really nice part and progression.
Yeah, So, I again, yeah, this song is pretty great. So what are your thoughts on it, Max?
I kind of view this as a less good The Widow, but it does have an excellent chorus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is so infectious and just powerful
I feel
that
like
it makes up for, I guess, the more boring parts of the song.
this song is
All
like
right.
the Widow has like a very clear like quiet then loud in like the verse and the chorus. To me, this song is like if you took some of the quiet out of the verse and put it into the chorus.
Huh.
If you just like transplanted it there.
All right. So is that all our thoughts on Vermicide?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Alright.
what the point I was making there with the dynamics
Oh.
thing, just very quickly because I realized I was kind of unclear, was just like I do think it's kind of similar to the Widow, but I think like it's different enough that like again I can't really compare them, even though like it is very clearly the Widow too, the same way that Viscera Eyes is very clearly Elvia too.
Yeah. But yeah. So next song.
Yeah,
All right. So next song is Mecha Amputechture, and this is like the jazz song on this album. Like this. Yeah. Thanks for that. But yeah, this is the jazz song, and I really like the intro to the song. Like right after the first couple lines, that big sort of explosion of just like the saxophones and the guitar shredding. Like I love that horn melody. You know, the da 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 da
dun
da da
dun
da.
dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this song, hot take, this might be my favorite song on the album.
This is my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, this song's great.
All
It
right.
starts off with that little and then like the weird like rap part in
Yeah.
the intro there. And then we get into the big horn riff, and then the verses on this song are the most groovy thing I've ever heard in my
Yeah.
entire life.
It's groovy and it's got this really interesting like
Effect on the
keyboard melody. Yeah,
bass.
the bass, but also like those keyboard melodies, like the like they're really like thin, but like they sound really cool.
Yeah,
And like
like
the way they like
the drum
Yeah.
part has this like it's a little bit like compressed.
yeah,
Sometimes
it's really weird sounding.
it sounds like a cool hip hop sample to me. Like that's kind of what it sounds like to me. This song, like the verses almost sound like a hip hop song, but then you get into the pre-chorus, which is like a little bit, which is kind of back into the rock side, and then you get into the chorus, and that's like a big prog explosion there, especially when they get into the second part with when they sing the word everybody, and
Yeah.
the keyboard is just like a big swell with like a massive chord there. Like this song, I love the way it sounds during pretty much all like the core components of it. And then the outro there when you get into the it lacks a human pulse part.
Yeah.
That's great because it doesn't do what Tetragrammaton did. It just kind of lets the song fade out in this really cool way. So
Yeah.
this song is like, even though it doesn't go as many places, I think it's a little bit more tight. Like,
Yeah, I can see that.
I think out of the three like prog epics on this album, this is probably the easiest to revisit. I think.
Yeah, but I like the part like the last 20 seconds of the song where it's just the horns. Because it's
Yeah.
such a great melody and just like that's a perfect way to end the song. But
Yeah.
I think also
And
this,
I think this also might have my favorite lyrics too. Like I really love the humans as ornaments line.
yeah.
I love-
Oh, humans as ornament. Yeah.
I really like the lyric "persuasion deflowers your sympathy." That's like
Yeah.
such a cool line. Like
Yeah, the entire chorus is cool. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone stabs all the time. Persuasion that flowers your sympathy. Everybody has chosen to help the shovels that bury me.
yeah, that
that's so
too. The
cool.
shovels that bury me. The like it's a really emotional chorus. I love it. And then also just the phrase "it lacks a human pulse" at the end. That's a very like
Yeah.
spooky lyric. A very ominous.
Honestly, I was kind of sad when I was really hoping that nobody had taken the band or album named Humans as ornaments, but someone already did. So you know.
Ah, that sucks.
Yeah.
I want to tell a story with this song.
Oh boy.
Yay!
Um, um, so earlier today, I was listening to this album in preparation for the podcast, and first three songs passed, and I was like, "This is, okay." And then the fucking rap part comes, just opening up the song, and I like jumped up and started like punching the air, and it was it was so good. It just caught me by like complete surprise, and I just went on this journey of like progressive rock, free jazz,
Yeah.
insanity.
Yeah.
And it's just that's what I like about it. It's Mars Volta esque insanity, and that's like what I want from the Mars Volta. This is everything I want, and it's a perfect song. It's probably like in my top 5 Mars Volta songs of all time.
I really think that like this song and Day of the Baphomets are where they really get into the genre fusing. Like this song has like I mentioned like these like kind of hip hop and funk elements to it, and like the kind of salsa aspects to it, and then like the horns towards the end are kind of their own thing. And like yeah, this song is great. It's like a very specific genre fusion going on here, and then and yeah, I really appreciate that. And just like yeah, the start of this song is just so perfect. Just those two little guitar chords, da Amputechture came, Philistine price. It's like, oh man, it's
So
like what's
fucking
it's like
good.
what's going on here? Like it's such a great just to quote. It's just like to quote the great poet Eminem, snap back to reality, hope that goes gravity. That is the exact emotion of this. It's like you're in this very kind of calm and emotional place with Vermicide, and then all of a sudden you're like snapped back into this mood of progressive insanity. It's great. So yeah, I think this is my favorite song on the album. It's probably not the one that I revisit the most. Just because I think up until these last 2 listens that I did for the podcast, I think that's like when I really realized it was my favorite.
All right, I have to say this is definitely one of my favorites on the album. I think it's definitely. I think out of my sort of the three big songs on this is probably my least favorite. Not because like I think it's bad, but it kind of doesn't have that same kind of. I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't have that kind of, I guess, epicness feeling that the other two have. This goes on more straightforward, but it's good in its own way. I think the one issue I have with the song is that it kind of has kind of a lacking guitar, like not. I guess like because mostly what this part is, it's the sort of the opening solo, and then most of the verse is like him kind of like straining the notes, these sort of really sort of strained guitar bends, and then you get into the chorus, and it's like that really weird but still pretty cool melody, and that's kind of mostly what it is, and it kind of doesn't really go as many sort of weird places as I kind of wish it did, but still, it's just kind of, yeah, that's my thoughts on the sort of the guitar in the song.
That's understandable. I definitely think like this song, if you were to compare it with other Mars Volta songs, it isn't quite, it's not as good in like the ways most of their songs are, and that the guitars aren't as crazy, and that it isn't going as structurally all over the place. Like this one is a lot more clearly like, okay, here are the verses, here are the pre-chorus and chorus, here's the breakdown, here's the outro. But but I do still think that like I think in spite of that, it's just like so cohesive and like so unique sounding, like both on this album and like in comparison with most of their other material, that I think it works.
Yeah. I just want to say, I completely forgot, the best part of the song is the first time after the lyrics, you gave me a corpse, you live in it now, you stare from a cap nourishment plow, and those fucking like high notes of Cedric and the guitar lining up. You know that part?
Yeah.
I'm talking about?
Yeah, that is cool.
That is the greatest part on the song. Like I love that every time. Just like those that simple part, but it's simple, but it's just so great. Like, man. All right.
Yeah.
So Max already gave their thoughts on the song. So yeah.
And this time I don't have anything more to add. So let's go on to Silos Magdalena. I don't think we'll have that much to say about it, mostly
Yeah.
because whoever added this to Genius didn't translate the lyrics, and I don't want to go and watch the YouTube video that somebody did of translating the lyrics again.
Yeah. But yeah, even then, like the song is just kind of I'd say this is the black sheep on the album because it's basically just like a Spanish guitar song. Like, that's basically all it is. And
Yes,
it's not
but I'm
bad.
okay with that because
Yeah, I am too.
like I think this album kind of needed a song like this. Like honestly, I think my biggest problem with this song probably isn't that it's kind of out of place on the album, but where it's placed in the album. I think that like I think I don't know how they would have had to rearrange the songs to make this work, but I almost kind of wish this song was after Day of the Baphomets, because I think this song works great as a contrast to like one of the big prog epics. But I almost think that Day of the Baphomets, which is a little bit more atonal and wild, could have used this song as a big calming moment, because it does its job as a calming moment so well. Like Cedric's vocals on the song are so beautiful, and like and the guitars are very nice too. It's just like such a great moment to catch your breath. Like the proper way to listen to this album really is if you're on like a big like car trip. It's like an hour and a half. And at one point you like stop at like a store because you're like hungry and thirsty. You just like loop this song while you're walking around in the store for 10 minutes.
No, you just like forget to plug your headphones in and you just hear like just everyone listening to you just like walking around.
You just hear it in the over the loudspeakers.
Oh, that would be a cool like gas station.
Yeah.
Instead, they just play Nickelback.
Oh god. Or they play Imagine Dragons.
Oh, yeah, that's even worse. But, yeah. So again, I don't. So, what are your thoughts on the song, Max?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice, soothing, acoustic thing. It also gets really weird at the end, like really weird and noisy, and kind of psychedelic, which I really do like. And it does do a really good job at like kind of putting the viewer, or not the viewer, listener, in sort of a trance and sort of like a very relaxed state. And I always like when the Mars Volta does that, like kind of the more like relaxing bits. Though this is probably like not as good as like the what was that one on the Mars Volta? I mean fucking Francis the Mute.
Are you thinking about Miranda?
Miranda.
Yeah, that one. I don't think it's as good as that, but it's definitely pretty good.
I was gonna say, you said viewer instead of listener. I automatically thought of like you just like watching this through an oscillator or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would do that.
You might as well.
Yeah.
One thing,
but
I actually
so
one thing I will say, one thing I think is interesting about the Mars Volta, sorry to interrupt, is that
that's okay.
I think Francis the Mute was kind of an album where they made a lot of where they kind of solidified a lot of their like song archetypes. And there's like a few songs that kind of fit into different archetypes. Like there is a very distinct archetype in the Mars Volta. God, I've said the word archetype way too many times. And that is the slow acoustic song that suddenly has, like, as TV tropes would put it, a last note nightmare, or basically like a big electronic freakout at the end. The first one was Televators, and then the next one was The Widow, and then this song is very much the next in that series. I think it might be the best at being that type of song. Like, I don't know if I like this song more than I like The Widow or Televators. Like, I think I like those two more as songs on their own, but I think this one kind of serves its purpose in the album the best, because there's more of a contrast, but at the same time it flows better into the weird section at the end, because the weird section is a little bit more of like a clear outro where like, you know, they put all the weird vocal effects on it, and which are really creepy, because there's like the one that's higher and then there's the one that's lower, and it's like really like exaggerating the range, and like the and like there's the weird filters on those too, and like the song is just this song, it just sounds like the song like gets possessed. It sounds like one of those like weird possessed like recordings you could find somewhere, and then just kind of suddenly just like kind of train wrecks at the end, which is like really effective. Whereas I think like Televators, it kind of like it almost doesn't do that enough. It's just like after the song ends, it's just suddenly kind of some ambient noise, and then the Widow kind of just like suddenly transitions into absolute nightmare, and you're like, oh my god, what's happening?
All right. So, yeah. So are we ready to move on to the next song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. So next song, Viscera Eyes. This is what I would call the straightforward rock song on this album. Like,
Yeah, like
this-
Elvia or I'm not entirely sure what the one on D-Loust would be. I guess Inertiatic ESP is kind of the
Yeah,
more straightforward rock
maybe.
song in that one.
But so this song, the opening riff is like really simple. It's basically just like 4 notes, but it's like really effective. Like it's just like that sort of rhythm to it, and just like that. And it just, I think just it's the so the low guitar and like the quiet sort of muted guitar in like the background that kind of really add up together well. And then like you get into the part where it's the guitar and the saxophone like playing together. This like kind of really
Distinct
really-
melody.
distinct melody. I don't know if you would call it Middle Eastern. I don't know.
Sorry, you you kind of cut out for a second. Wait. We are facing some technical difficulties. Just a moment. Okay, sorry. I accidentally I opened up Guitar Pro for a second on my on accident, and when that happens, it makes everything else quiet.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I heard you saying the last thing you said that showed up on the recording was I don't know if it sounded Middle Eastern to you, but that's like kind of how it was for me, or something like that.
Right. And then the melody. It's like, I guess. Oh, is it again? And like it's a cool melody. And like at the very end, it kind of has these weird tritones, and then like it just keeps like going up, and it's a really cool melody.
Yeah.
And so also for the most of the verses, Cedric is singing in Spanish.
Yes.
So, and he really nails it a lot with these sort of mix of high notes and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a great vocal melody.
Yeah. Honestly, this album has like a lot of really cool, like really small guitar parts. Like the part where it's where is it? There is a venom in numerical lines. Like that entire part just has like these really sort of interesting sort of guitar, sort of not interludes, but like these sort of riffs that are like really high, and a lot of the times they have like a lot of these sort of weird, kind of like off kilter stuff. And then, and you just have, and then you get into like the chorus, and it's just like, you know, really low notes, along with, you know, the squealing saxophones, and then like, you know, so you're going in your viscera eyes. It just like works really well. It's got that kind of hard rock edge to it, along with sort of the influence from like, you know, jazz and funk and Middle Eastern stuff too.
Yeah, this song, there's so many ways I could describe it. Like, this, we mentioned earlier, this is a reworking of an At the Drive-In song, and this song definitely has that kind of vibe. It feels like if you took like a punk song and then you like it just kind of suddenly made it into like, and then you kind of if you put that in a blender with like a funk song and like a salsa song and like a jazz song with the weird saxophones and stuff.
Yeah, it just, and then like you get like that kind of repeating a little bit, and then you have a little jam, and then you have like the chorus again, and then you have like this part at the end, which is just like this, like it's an actual jazz part, like
Yeah.
the drums and the bass and like the rhythm guitar, it's all just like, it's literally a jazz song. Like it's not even like jazz influence. It's just a jazz song along with sort of Omar shredding, and then you get into like the last kind of part before it fades out, where it's just like Cedric like railing these huge vocals along with Omar just playing this really strong like wah pedal riff.
Yeah.
It's the perfect way to end a song, this kind of song.
Yeah, this song is great in how like it takes kind of a pop song structure and then just suddenly kind of takes it into a different direction at the end. This song uses its runtime extremely well. Like, I feel like even if someone like wasn't a big fan of the Mars Volta, they could like listen to this song and they'd be like, yeah, I mean, you could maybe make this like 7 minutes long, but this uses its 9 minutes pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, because yeah, we get, because I mean, so first let's talk about that rhythm guitar riff. It's great
Yeah.
because it's just power chords, but the progression itself is like unique enough that it feels very distinct.
I don't even think it's power chords. I think it's just him playing the low E notes.
I think it
Like,
is.
that's-
I think it is
Yeah.
power chords.
If you look at the him playing the live video, it's literally just him like just playing those the E note, not the E note, the E string. That's all
Well,
it is.
I mean, there is a second guitarist there who's usually playing this riff, and I think he's playing power chords.
All right. But you know the point stands.
But either
a
way,
cool-
it's like it's either a very simple chord or it's not a chord at all. But it's just that progression of going from the G to the A sharp to the F sharp is like really unique. I don't know if I've heard it in another song. And that's also helped by the rhythm too. Like the song is in 4/4, pretty like standard tempo and rhythm, but it's
Yeah.
just like the riff itself. I think the fact that it's specifically on a 16th note count, that it's not really going on like traditional 8th note counts, really helps it, because that da 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 da, it doesn't really
Yeah.
feel like, it doesn't feel like a standard power chord riff, even though that kind of is what it is. It's really great in that regard. And then like it's really great how we're just kind of going through that most of the time. There's just like that riff, and then the lead guitar in the intro there doing that part with the horns there, and then in the background there's that nice little, there's a second rhythm guitar that's just doing dead notes, and it's very
Yeah.
funky. It kind of gives it that sound. Like I'm not sure how they do that. I think it's like through, when you do like dead notes through a wah pedal, it kind of gives it that sound. But
Right.
it really is adding to the rhythm in spite of not adding to the harmony at all. So there's like, this song is nice in that like it feels like it's taking these kind of like, it's taking like a pop convention and then just adding on to it these kind of genre influences in an interesting way.
Yeah.
And then like you get into the pre-chorus and the chorus, and suddenly it's not doing that riff anymore, and the rhythm guitar part is this really nice kind of mix between like simple and complex riff, where it starts off and it's just like da 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 da, and it's
Yeah.
very impactful, and it's like do 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 do, and you're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
that's
It's
Yeah,
like
I've-
it's a great
That's
kind
what
of
I'm talking
like,
about.
yeah, it starts out impactful and then kind of goes into being more intricate, and then the fact that it's not always like really kind of like going all out, and then you have the really kind of contrasts nicely and complements each other with the saxophone just kind of squealing away there.
Yeah.
And then I will say this song almost becomes too much in terms of how loud it is, in between the second and third chorus when they just throw on literally all the component parts of the song on top of each other.
I was gonna say, like, it's just all the parts. Like, yeah, I like that part, though. It's pretty, I like how it's all these different parts, but it still lines up pretty well.
The first, yeah, it's nice because it's almost like a weird deconstruction of a pop song, that section of it, where it's like everything here is composed to sound the same and put you in the same mood, so just boom, here's all of it on top of each other. It's a nice little, like, weird postmodern-y moment. But the first time I listened to the song, I was kind of like, oh god, I'm getting a headache. But then that final part, that outro is so cool. Like, the bass riff and the rhythm guitar riff is great. It's really nice and calming after everything has been going insane. Especially that last part when you have the two tracks of the guitars just, like, noodling away right before it goes to this part, and the drums freaking out part too. And this section's great because in spite of the fact that, like, the guitar is wailing away and there's a weird solo and Cedric is screaming at the end, it never, like, stops being kind of soothing. I think it helps that towards the end there's a subtle little change in the harmony in the keyboards and the horns, where instead of doing the do 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 do, it's like do 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 do, and that's like a very pleasant melody there. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in this song, and it has a really nice flow to it. Like, this song, there's a weirdly specific image in my head whenever I listen to it.
Yeah, me too.
Like, when I listen to the song, what I imagine is a parade being blown up. I imagine that's what this song sounds like to me. Like, it sounds like a parade being, like, sabotaged, and then that ending part there is like people, like, kind of waking up from the wreckage and shit. That's what I imagine. Again, I said it's very specific and weird.
For me, I imagine, like, a giant desert. Like, you're walking around in a giant desert, and, like, there's two people having, like, a sniper battle in a desert. That's what I imagine, because it has kind of that deserty feel to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like a parade, like, in Mexico.
All right. Oh, and I was just going to say, you showed me that, like, really funny review of the song. Can you just, like, read that here?
Unfortunately, I think that review might have been taken off Rate Your Music.
Oh, no.
Let me see. I gotta find it.
That was great. I love that. It was just like... the one part is...
yeah, they took it off there.
The one part I remember is like, who is this Mexican guy squealing, hammering the E note? Just like...
oh yeah, they were like, here's an out of rhythm brass section, and then they're like, here's a Mexican guy banging on the low E string of his guitar, and then they're like, he just keeps hitting that low E for the whole song or something. But you know what, if I can't do that, then you will return to the secret notebook of Omar Rodriguez Lopez. Let's catch up. So firstly, back with Mecha Amputechture, much too straightforward. Add some more backwards noise stuff and let the band jam out until it's long enough. Then here's a Silos Magdalena. We've recorded a great haunting Spanish guitar ballad here. Nice. But surely there must be a room for improvement. Of course, overdub a noisy, out-of-place guitar solo at the end and pile on some effects on Cedric's voice. In fact, let's use all of the vocal effects. All of them. All right.
All of them.
And now we're on to Viscera Eyes. I've effectively caught us up, except I skipped the first two songs.
Whatever.
Track 6, Viscera Eyes. At this point, Omar's mother knocks on the door and enters his study. Omar's mother. Omar, you emaciated little homo. Omar, Mom, what is it? I'm trying to work here. Exactly. This song you've written. It's an amazing song. Don't you dare fuck it up, young man, or you are grounded. And then it says, then there's a link to a tiny URL image, which unfortunately does not show up anymore. However, it says the URL for this link is www.myfacewhen.net upload/okmeme.jpg. So it's just him going like, okay.
Alright, yeah. So is that all there is for the song?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just
was
need to share.
expecting that.
I just need to share the emaciated homo.
Yeah.
He
All
is
right.
not an emaciated homo. He is a cute twink. Shut up. Anyway,
I have no clue what the word emaciate means anyway. But now that you have spoken for the first time in 3 years, Max, what do you have to say about Viscera Eyes?
I kind of have the same thoughts about it as I did with Tetragrammaton. It is a cool song. I do think it's a lot less interesting, but it's still pretty good. I don't know. It's probably one of the least memorable songs on the whole album for me, in all honesty.
That's interesting because this is the song that I've listened to the most times out of the album.
Probably second for me.
I
So,
think
yeah.
one day Mecha Amputechture and Vermicide might pass it, but I think those three are probably my favorite songs to return to on the album. I think Mecha Amputechture is still my favorite overall, and then Tetragrammaton is somewhere in there.
All right. So is that it for the song?
Yeah.
All right. Here's the big one. Day of the Baphomets.
Track 7,
Yes.
Day of the Baphomets.
After the fierce encounter with his mother, Omar smokes some marijuana like a cigarette to calm his nerves. You know, our fans are wonderful. They're flowers. Every single one of them is my best friend. I want to make them happy. Let's see. We've had this song lying around since what? The Comatorium days? Let's change the title, spice it up with some neat soloing, and make it lovely. They will love it and be so happy.
Well,
I'm
mean,
sorry,
like-
I had to interrupt you with that
Yeah,
because I
no,
just love the
I-
first line.
All right. So, yeah, this song, like we said before, it takes some of the lyrics and the vocal melody from a song from the Comatorian days. But yeah, so this song is my favorite off the album. I love this song. Not only is it my favorite off the album, but it is probably one of my favorite songs of all time. Period, because it just blends like everything about what's great about this album into one song. You know, changing parts, great instrumentation, great vocals, great lyrics, just everything. I mean, this song starts off just like it's this really cool, calm riff with the drums and all the percussion, and then that bass solo, just
That bass
is-
solo is amazing. Yeah.
yeah, he just like rails on that, like because it's not very complicated at first, but it's very melodious. But then, like when it gets to the complicated part, it's just still really cool. And then the song just keeps building and building and building, and then just like off the rails insanity. Just all these melodies all playing together, like the guitar, the bass, the keyboards, and the saxophone are all playing different melodies, but they all sync up really well. And just like, I'm at a loss for words. Like honestly, this song is just amazing. I love it.
So, one thing to note about that bass solo is that Juan Alderete said that that entire solo was recorded in one take, which is
Yeah,
fucking
damn.
ridiculous.
Like, so is that to imply that like it wasn't just edited together?
I guess it was just. I think more what he's implying is just that like he didn't have to retry it, that
Right.
that he just like came up with it and then did it, and then it was good enough.
Yeah, good enough is a bit of an understatement.
Well, yeah, that it was amazing, and that if they wouldn't even need to redo it because it's already perfect.
Yeah, but this song is just like a really interesting melody because it's like that do 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 do, like
Yeah.
it's and just like the way the during the verses it's that melody and then the bass is playing and the bass and the keyboards are like playing along with it
Yeah,
and it's like different
but they're
accents.
slightly different. Yeah,
They're like different accents on like 16th notes, so it's just like it's this really cool like part like that verse is just really cool with like the lyrics and stuff and like all the melodies, and then you have like those two off-kilter guitars playing together like completely out of like sync with everything else, like, and then you just get into like the oh man, I could go on forever about how much I love this song because it's got so much energy and like vitality to it, and everything syncs up well, and just all the parts are unique in their own way, but they all kind of still feel similar in a way. Uh, I think the song has like almost like best guitar work in my opinion.
For me,
Like,
this. Oh, sorry.
I know you can go.
For me, this song is basically like. It has some of the highest highs, but also the lowest lows on the album for me. Like, for me, it's kind of uneven. Not because there are any parts where the, like, musicianship is bad. Well, I mean, I guess maybe the Poachers in Your Home part, because that's literally just one note that everyone is blasting. But
Sure,
it's
but it's
more
kind of-
just like... that doesn't actually bother me, and there's so much going on there that I didn't even notice until I looked up the tab. But for me personally, it's like there's some parts of this song where it's just like it's just a little bit too much, where it's like they just kind of pile on too many guitar overdubs and loud horns screeching high notes and vocal overdubs, and I'm like, and it's like there's parts of the song where like the sheer musicianship going on is so amazing, like the bass solo and the kind of like guitar and sax like duel that happens at one point, and
Yeah,
like the
that's,
weird percussion solo, but it's like
Oh yeah, the bongo solo. That's perfect.
but it's like there's just kind of sections where it's like it just doesn't to me, this song, it's like it just needed a little bit more work, where it's like the transitions don't quite feel right between the sections, and like sometimes it just kind of feels like they went too far with like piling on tons and tons of tracks of instruments, when it's like what you had is already good enough and the song already sounds big and epic. You don't need this much like slightly mismatched really high guitar and horn stuff going on.
I can see where you're coming from with that, where it's just kind of, but I think that's kind of what I like about it. It's so crazy that it just like, even if it was too much, like the fact that, like you said, like the instrumentation is just like so great that it just doesn't really bother me. I think just like the one part that I will always find super, it's the part where it's the part where he's like singing the really kind of high notes. Let's see, I'm gonna find it, but it's like, it's not that. It's the part where it's like follow the river by the lips. That part where it's like him singing those really high notes. Like that guitar melody is like, it's like really rhythmic and weird. And it's just, I think I should know that this is probably like the only Mars Volta song that I've like seriously tried to play guitar to, and I've gotten pretty good at it. But like that one part is just so weird because it's like he's switching up all the strings, and he's doing like these weird kind of like quick like hammer-on melodies, and it gets like really tough trying to get it right. So I just wanted to say that because but I still like that part a lot. It's hard to play in guitar.
You know, this song is basically a goofy parody of the Mars Volta in the best way possible.
I can see that.
This song sounds like if like some cartoon decided to parody the Mars Volta and then wrote a song, and it's like, yeah, let's just put like a bongo solo in there because that's fucking hilarious. This song, to think about the song is the funniest thing in the world, and that's why it's the greatest song of all time. It's just so absurd in its presentation.
This is just like that one time that Pavement went on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and it's just like them like randomly squealing their instruments. This is like what I imagine like what happened if they went on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which
It's like take some Adult Swim show, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna like parody the Mars Volta, and then they do this.
Oh, no, I have a better. It's like it's like Homestar Runner with Limousine, and like if they made if they made like a prog rock version of Limousine, they'd write this song.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's my new headcanon for this song now. Never mind. It's a 10 out of 10. What I should say about this song, even though there are parts that like I do find kind of like unpleasant to listen to, what I will say is I think for me it's not that this song like that I ever listen to it and I'm just like, oh god. But for me, it's more like I have to be in a very specific mood to get like really into it. And when I do, I'm like, yes. Like that part where they keep switching between 11/16 time and 13/16 time.
Yeah,
with
the yeah, that's a great part.
like when that part comes up, I'm like, fuck yes, I'm here, I'm ready. But then like some days I'll listen to the song and I'll be like, and I'll just be like, oh, that's a lot of squealing.
Yeah,
like it very much depends on the mood I'm in. I never think it's a bad song though. I always am like very impressed by it. It's just that like sometimes I'm not in the right mood. It's not you, Mars Volta, it's me.
I have to say though, you're talking about that one part where it keeps switching time. Like that guitar part at the end before it switches, like it's played so fast that I can't even believe it's like that's like humanly possible. Like it's just like dilly on.
There's so many 30-second notes in this song. I remember the other day I was looking at the tab for this, and fucking Songster, for some reason, only for guitar parts, they have like a difficulty meter ranging from 1 to 8. And like this song's guitar parts are like 3s and 4s, and I'm like, how can you put a song with this many 30-second notes as a 3 out of 8 on the difficulty meter?
Yeah, like I've gotten pretty good at playing most of the parts on the song. This is like the one part this is like the one song I really like to play along to, and I've never even like attempted to play that really fast part before on that part where it keeps switching back because it's so fast. Like you can't. Unless you're like Omar and you have like, you know, hands of steel, you really can't play that part justice. But I've gotten pretty good at like the other parts. But yeah,
I have a conspiracy theory that Omar's hands he lost his hands in a tragic accident in between the making of Relationship of Command and Deloused in the Comatorium. And they gave him secret prototype robot hands that were both bigger than his regular hands and made of steel. And that is how he can play the parts that he played.
Yeah. I think, no, my headcanon is that Omar and Cedric's afros are, like, linked together, and that's what creates their great musicianship. So whenever they, like, lose them, they, like, can't play good anymore. And that's why they broke up.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to say that it's, like... that like he uses his hair as like extra fingers, like you know, it's like the guy from that anime series, how he uses his nose hair to like punch people.
No, I was thinking of fucking Zevo 3 with the hair. You know what I'm talking about?
Or maybe he just has Mr. Fantastic fingers.
No. Anyone know what Zevo 3 is?
Unfortunately not.
What's that?
Okay, it's really bad superhero show to promote Skechers shoes, but I watched it a lot when I was younger. Anyway, and I say that because it's one character in the show that uses hair, but yeah, this show, I mean, this song has, like I just said, a lot of great guitar parts, and just like, you know, I just lost track. So, is that all our thoughts on this song?
Yeah.
I think just about. And I just want to say again, this is a good song. I'm just stupid.
Yeah. All right. So, last track on the album, El Ciervo Vulnerado, the sort of the counterpart to Vicarious Atonement, and that is kind of very similar in like tone because it's just kind of this very sort of slow, sort of almost percussionless jam, but this time it's got classical Indian instruments. So you know it's like 10 times more hippie, I guess. Like I don't know. It's kind of got that like, it's got that kind of very it's the trippy vibe, but it's like instead of being very electronic, it's like if they did it with like you know, all sort of just classical instruments, I guess.
From the secret notebook of Omar Rodriguez Lopez, track El Ciervo Vulnerado. At this point, the THC-induced mellowness turns to depression. Ugh, I'm too tired for this shit. End the album with 9 minutes of droning and noodling. 90% of everyone will hate it, but whatever. I don't give a fuck. Gotta go to bed now. Damn.
Book closes.
The ending line of this review is and that's the story of how the Mars Volta create a mostly good album that goes out of the way to make you hate it.
All right, but yeah, I think this is like a great way to end the album. Just kind of like it's very similar. It kind of reminds me of how Francis the Mute have the same part starting and ending, except it's kind of because it's got the same tone and sort of the same idea of just sort of the mostly percussionless, crazy jams with all the weird noises. But yeah, it's really interesting to me how it kind of ends and starts the same way. Like you could almost mistake them for the same song, honestly.
Um, it's interesting. When I looked up the tab for Vicarious Atonement and I noticed all the like ridiculous tone changes and how it isn't really played in a time signature,
Yeah.
I kind of noticed that this song is more structured, and to me that's kind of a problem. Like, well, I do like this song, but like,
Yeah, no,
I don't think it's as good as Vicarious Atonement because I don't think it has that same kind of quality of like the jam feel to it.
Yeah,
Where
I
like
think
even
that's
though
kind of my
this
issue
song
with it,
has
too.
more instrumentation, because it's a little more structured and because there aren't the tempo changes, it feels like less dense and a little bit more boring. Even though like
Yeah.
even though it does kind of hit the same like ominous note at the end where they like double up the voice and like he's singing like really creepy lyrics and shit. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot this song it doesn't feel quite as like special when they did it the second time.
Yeah. I have to say I really like the first lyric of the song, which is "I've been drinking Black Mirror again."
Yeah.
Like that's I think that I really like that line. You know, they predicted the name of a TV show from like 5 years. That's five. I don't fucking know when Black Mirror came out, but yeah, this is the second time that the band has predicted the name of something. First they did it with Plastic Memories, and now they did it with this. So
Oh shit.
I think did I tell you about that the whole Plastic Memories thing.
You didn't, but let's save that for later.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, this song does actually have some really great lyrics. I particularly love if your kingdom won't come, the younger I stay, forever I rot.
yeah,
That's like a very that album. It kind of feels like the bleh, that lyric. It kind of feels like the mission statement of the entire album. Like that very like anger and disillusionment, like kind of at this point like turning into like almost kind of tired resentment at like religion.
right.
But yeah.
But yeah, this song it does have some great lyrics. I really like those kind of keyboard chords at the beginning of it. Just the like wow, like that they.
No, I think those are like I think those are the Indian instruments.
That could be the case, but it sets the tone
Yeah.
very well. And I like a lot of Cedric's vocal deliveries. I like how he's kind of in the deeper range, very kind of like creepy and slow. And I like even like at the end to the point he's almost like whispering at the end. I do like how this song it actually like it loops into Vicarious Atonement perfectly. Like because there's kind of like a long fade out that just kind of suddenly ends. Like it doesn't cut the way that like Sarcophagi did on Francis the Mute. It's just kind of like a sudden ending.
Yeah, it just
rather.
stops.
And then that little sound effect that starts off Vicarious Atonement that then goes into the guitar part, it loops very well into each other. So this song has a lot of good elements to it. But as a whole, it does feel like kind of a weak finish.
Yeah, sort of, but
Like, I feels like they kind of could have done more with it. Like,
Right.
maybe they could have had, like, a sudden change at the end that now it's all epic. Or maybe they could have started off epic and then had the long outro. Or maybe just something.
all right. So, what are your thoughts on this song, Max?
I think this is my second favorite song on the album.
Oh,
It's just-
shit. Plot twist.
It's just so I like drone, I like atmospheric stuff, and I think that this is just like the perfect, just okay, like in The Notebook, you're depressed and angry, and you're just done with this bullshit. So in kind of this like climatic sort of way, you lay on your bed and rot and die, and that's what it feels like. You're rotting and dying of the crippling depression that will never go away, no matter how hard you try.
All right.
Actually, yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point. This is another mood song for me.
Yeah.
Big mood.
Sometimes this, so with Deloused, I talked about how sometimes when I listen to the album, I'll almost just like cut it down into an EP where there's like a couple tracks I skip and then I end it on Televators. This album is similar sometimes, where sometimes I just cut the last like 2 tracks entirely and just listen to like the first 6, or we'll just listen to like 2 through 6. And that's
Right.
not to say that those remaining tracks are bad. It's just that like sometimes it's that there's some songs on here that I need to be in a very specific mood to like, and well, not like, but to like really get into. Whereas like most of this album, like the entire middle section, I can just get way into at any time.
All right.
But overall, this album still holds up a lot.
Yeah. So I guess we could wrap up our thoughts now.
You know what's one thing we should say?
What?
The name of the album, because it's a pretty interesting
Oh yeah.
meaning.
So this name is it was created.
Portmanteau.
Yes, portmanteau of, I think it's where is it? It's like
Amputate Technology and Architecture.
right, and it was coined by Jeremy Michael Ward. So yeah, even after death, he like constantly is like influencing the band and like adding stuff.
Yeah.
So,
And I love the sound of the word, and I love that what the Cedric has said, or at least what I believe he said, is that those words, amputate technology and architecture, technology is kind of debatable. Some people say that is a part of the word, some will say that it isn't, but that those 2 words refer to like the cycle of creation and destruction, which is like that's, and this word like it feels that way, doesn't it? Like it has like this really big feeling to it, like that's kind of
very
encompassing a lot.
Very mysterious.
And I guess that does really fit with the album, how it does kind of loop back in on itself with the last 2 tracks.
Right. Like
So, you go.
yeah, it's very like yeah. I was gonna say, so this album, like I've said, is my personal favorite because like because I tend with this album to skip not a lot of songs, but I tend to skip sort of the first and the last, and As the Les Magdalena, because they're just kind of they have to.
What were those 2 words there?
I said Asilos. Oh, I said wait. I said Magdalena, not Magdalena.
Okay, yeah. I was.
Yeah.
I just. The pronunciation sounded kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I tend to sort of skip the sort of more. But the thing is that even if like the songs aren't necessarily my big cup of tea, like just the other 5 songs on this album are so great that they just add together to make one of my favorites. Like, sometimes I tend to be really kind of sort of relative with sort of my enjoyment of albums, where like even if certain songs I didn't like the other songs are so strong that they just build up to make a great album, and this is like exactly that for me.
Well, and I do think that those 3 songs you mentioned, like I said, I think they all tie together the other songs very well.
Right. So I've already sort of opened my heart to how much I like the sound, but like if you guys want to do your wrapping thoughts, I'm okay.
You've opened your heart, now we'll live and learn. Yeah, like I said, to me this album, it's more uneven than the first 2 and a little bit more kind of all over the place, but in a way that's kind of what's interesting about it. And overall, a lot of the songwriting is still so either intricate or atmospheric or other poetic positive adjectives that it still feels really good as a whole. Like this album, this is another one where I can return to it quite a lot and it doesn't get old. Just And in this case, it isn't really because it flows as well as Francis the Mute does, or because all the songs stand on their own as well as they do on Deloused in the Comatorium, but it's just because there's so much going on in so many different directions. It's kind of because it's less cohesive that I can return to it quite a bit. So
Right.
overall, yeah, it's still like an 8 out of 10. I still think it's a really strong album from them.
So, Max?
I think this is it's a pretty good album, but a sort of mediocre Mars Volta album. I do think that I would revisit this, specifically the two songs I said that were my favorites, but overall, I think it's a pretty uneven project where it's mostly pretty bland for the Mars Volta specifically. Overall, I give it probably a strong 6. Still really good. Still very strong in a lot of parts.
All right.
I mean,
so,
I do still kind of agree with that. Like I said earlier, the fact that there was only a year between Francis the Mute and this, it's both a strength and a weakness. It's impressive, but they probably could have fleshed out a few things more.
Yeah. But is that all our thoughts?
Yeah.
All right. So, thank you for listening to the Esoteric Music Deathspiral. Join us next time where we talk about a recommendation of mine, one of my albums. And because we didn't get to do that last time, or not last time, we didn't get to do that before this one because of all the crap that I had to go through. But yeah, this is Noisebandit signing out.
This is Rei the Bleh.
This is Princess Plund.
Plund.
Yeah.
Join us for an episode that hopefully will be less
Alive.
long and unwieldy.